Frigid temperatures tonight in New York City as we move towards the holiday season. I'm really pleased to welcome to the show for the first time someone I think we might be hearing more from in the coming days and weeks, William Murtaugh, Witness 1. Welcome to the show, Myrt. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for people who perhaps have not seen you before and might not be aware of you, you've got a YouTube channel called From the Desk of Myrt Witness 1. Myrt Witness 1 Live, and people can subscribe to that YouTube channel. You've been doing daily and sometimes more frequent updates about this continually developing case of Field McConnell, who is incarcerated in the Pierce County Jail. Do you want to give us a little background on what's going on and how you became involved, Myrt?
Well, to start with how I got involved, about 11 years ago, I was mobile live streaming local true crime cases down here in Florida. In the Central Florida area specifically, we had a slew of missing child cases. One in particular was the Casey Anthony case where Kaylee Anthony had disappeared. And then right as they were going through the preliminary steps of getting Casey Anthony to trial, Kaylee Anthony disappeared. And so I briefly did a segment up there because, as it happens, I have a business in Putnam County, so I was quite familiar with the area. And in the process of doing that, I learned that Timothy Charles Holmseth had also been involved to some extent, maybe an unwelcome one, in his take on the situation. As time went on, Timothy, through intermediaries, started contacting me saying that an attorney in Florida was involved in some way with the case in a negative fashion, and there was an exchange of information going through his intermediaries to me.
Let me pause you for a second there, Myrt, because you see, a lot of people have heard about this guy, Timothy Holmseth, and I didn't know anything about any of this stuff until I discovered Timothy Holmseth through a pretty unlikely set of circumstances. I think a lot of people who watch Crowdsource the Truth are aware that I've been sued by two different groups, and in researching material for my defense, I discovered that you and this lawyer, Kim Pacazio, as well as a woman named, who was the third person in your case there? Guar.
To be perfectly honest, I've forgotten the name of the woman. I never met her. I know very little about her, right, except for this lawsuit. She had set up a petition site, and basically to have Timothy Holmseth, what we call Baker acted in Florida, in other words, involuntarily committed. I voted in the affirmative on the site and made a brief comment, and they used that in the lawsuit in order to get me involved, mainly because of my loose association with Kim Pacazio.
So that was like a change.org or something kind of petition?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was done through one of those petition companies, and I think maybe a dozen people responded to it. But
that's interesting.
Holmseth got real upset. Somehow he got connected with Robert David Steele, who in turn referred him to this lawyer, and that's what triggered this lawsuit.
Okay, so let me pause you because I think we're dumping a lot of information on people that might be hard for them to digest. So Timothy Holmseth was allegedly investigating the kidnapping of a 5-year-old child named Haley Cummings, correct?
That is correct.
And it's my understanding that Kim Pacazio was somehow representing, the mother and father of this 5-year-old girl were divorced, and Kim Pacazio, the lawyer in question, was somehow providing legal representation for the mother. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Initially, Miss Picasio did a pro bono at the request of an outside attorney to see if the biological mother could get custody of the remaining children. Um, for specific reasons, Kim finally dropped out of the situation because it was one of these situations where it was a client that a lawyer would not want to have.
Right. And it's important that we mention that the father of Haley Cummings and the girlfriend of her father are both in jail right now for drug trafficking. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, correct. They got caught up in a sting operation where they were both in a car, along, strangely enough, with a woman from Texas Extra Search who was there to try and help find the child. And they got pretty hard. I think they got like 10 years apiece for solicitation to distribute narcotics.
And what is the
They're
drug they were using?
hard.
Is it meth or something? Oxycontin?
Yeah,
I think the grandmother was like dealing Oxycontin patches. So we've got a bunch of people who have some abuse problems, substance abuse problems.
yeah, it's all substance abuse. There's many people surrounding uh, the network with this child that were involved with drugs.
Right.
It's a problem in this small community.
Right. So when I discovered Timothy Holmseth, it was as a result of this lawsuit that Holmseth had brought. He's represented by a lawyer named Stephen S. Biss, who people who are familiar with this channel will know is representing Robert David Steele in his lawsuit against me. Stephen S. Biss also represents Devin Nunes in a series of lawsuits against CNN, McClatchy, the Fresno Bee, a lot of lawsuits that Devin Nunes has been bringing. And so, as I mentioned, when I was just researching various things for my own defense, I came across this lawsuit that was brought on Holmseth's behalf by Stephen S. Biss against you, Kim Picasio, and this woman, Guar is her last name, who allegedly started some sort of online petition that was, you've just told us, wanting to have law enforcement basically declare Timothy Holmseth mentally unstable or something. What is it they were trying to
do? They wanted an involuntary confinement to have him examined to determine whether or not he was sane because of some of the things he was saying and doing in relation to the case of Haley Cummings case.
And that's not illegal to do, is it? There's a law that you can, if there's someone who is a menace to the public, who is threatening people, or let's say publishing false stories and stalking and harassing people for more than a decade, it's the type of thing that someone can do within their rights. Start a petition. If other people are aware of this guy's activity, they can sign, bring it to the attention of the proper authorities, right?
That's correct. They would have a hearing, determine if there was probable cause to have him involuntarily committed, and then he would be committed. He was doing a lot of things. He was filing frivolous lawsuits in the area as pro se, representing himself. And he even got to the point where they declared him as being filing all these. Yeah, exactly. And the judge said in order to come to court again, you need to get an attorney.
Right. Yeah.
And that didn't stop him, but that was the rule.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that people have the right to access the courts, but sometimes people abuse that right. So the people who these cases are being brought against, in this case yourself and Ms. Picasio, they also deserve the right to have their peaceful lives not disrupted by false accusations and things like this. So in my research, I came across this lawsuit. There's a number of interesting things I'm learning about it even now, and this is public information. People can download this from Pacer. We can see that it's Timothy Charles Holmseth versus Kim Lowry Picasio, William K. Murtaugh, and Karen Denise Gower. Now, this is the woman who started the petition, And the interesting thing is, you've never met this woman, have you, William?
No, I didn't know her. I was referred to the petition site by a number of links, and I have never met or talked to Denise Gower, neither has Kim Picasio.
And isn't it correct that she never appeared for this? She never answered anything in this suit?
As far as I know, she never responded to the lawsuit.
Never responded at all. And I can tell you that I've been searching quite energetically for this woman, and I'm not able to find her. I'm pretty good at finding people and calling them up and asking them smart-ass questions when they're up to no good. And this woman is very difficult to find. I'm ready to say on this broadcast right now that I do believe this lawyer, Stephen S. Biss, has developed a method of using operational plants in lawsuits to facilitate certain things. He has a license to practice law in Virginia. Now, you live in Florida, Mert, right?
That's correct. We live in, Kim and I live in Florida. They chose Gower in order to get the case heard in Virginia for two reasons. First of all, that's where she lives as a resident, and it is also supposedly where Twitter or one of the social media accounts is located. And they had to come up with some way to get it in his law practice area.
That's right. See, it's my feeling, it's my opinion that this person, Karen Denise Gower, was added as a co-defendant specifically so that there could be a claim of jurisdiction in Virginia where Stephen S. Biss practices law. He's not allowed to practice law in Florida. He would have to appear pro hoc vice, and he'd have to have a good reason to do that because there's a lot of lawyers in Florida that somebody could hire if they wanted to sue you. And the other thing is this was for like a huge sum of money. Nothing compared to the lawsuit brought against me, but there seems to be a modus operandi that Mr. Biss is engaged in where he always seems to have some mystery figure in the lawsuit who, I mean, a strong argument could be made this might not even be a real person. No one's been able to contact her at all, and she didn't respond to this case at all. And again, you know, whether or not the statements made in this lawsuit are true, you've got to respond to it. You've got to hire a lawyer or take action. Picasio is a lawyer herself, so perhaps she can handle this differently, but I am speculating right now that this is a tactic that's being used by Stephen S. Biss in a very sophisticated game of lawfare where he's weaponizing the civil justice system against individuals like you who perhaps are bringing forward evidence that's unfavorable to his clients. Talk to us a little bit, Mert, if you could, about the evidence that you've found relative to claims made by Timothy Holmseth.
Okay, what I'm going to address a little quickly, what you described is what is known as a straw man defense or prosecution in the lawsuit. The plaintiff's lawyer will come up with what's known as a straw man or some individual as a convenience to get the lawsuit made, whether it be having to do with location, in this case Virginia, or something like that. Now, as far as Tim Holmseth, when he barged into, from what I understand, the case down in Florida, he started contacting Miss Picasio and people that are working with her, and they basically told him they weren't interested. Thank you for calling, but we're handling this on our own. And he doesn't take no for an answer. He kept calling back and calling back and calling back. And she gave him ample warning. She even went and answered a few questions for him and said, okay, you got your stuff, go away. He wouldn't go away. Hence, she was forced to file the judgment against him, which led to his initial arrest.
Right. And this has been going on for 10 years. So I want people, there's a lot of people in our comments right here now, Mert, who are supporters of Field McConnell, who are saying negative things about me and you. I want to be clear, this is not a video that's being made to antagonize Field McConnell. However, Field McConnell is not my friend. This is not a video being made in support of Field McConnell. As long as Field McConnell sits in his house and doesn't wrongfully accuse people of things and call for individuals to go to their place of business and conduct citizens' arrests, or worse, to kill those people, I have no issue with Field McConnell. But there's a bigger issue here, Mert, is that there's a lot of people on the internet who like to hurl accusations and throw around information and think that they have evidence of things when in fact they don't. As far as I know, I've never met Kim Picasio. I believe you have. You know her personally. You speak to her frequently. But from what I understand, she's a lawyer who's never been arrested for anything, is not in jail for drug trafficking, is not a criminal, but rather is a mother, has her own children, and has been plagued by these harassing lawsuits and false allegations for more than a decade, to the extent that it's damaged her business, it's damaged her public reputation, it's damaged her children's perception. They go on the internet and can see these things. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, see, the thing of it is, people don't understand. I don't have an issue with Field McConnell personally. I never even heard of him until all of a sudden that Tim Homseth started talking about Field. The issue came up when Field started parroting what Homseth was saying. He started going after Kim. Not only was he repeating the same accusations, but he had her guilty of the charges that Tim Homseth levied against her, and was saying that she was going to be arrested and executed after a trial different than our current court system. Field McConnell, Kirk Pendergrass, and some others want to completely change our legal system, and they want to get rid of all bar lawyers and come up with a whole new way of charging people, giving them trials, and then punishing them. And it's been a rather confusing mess. But if Field McConnell hadn't got mixed up with Timothy Homseth, he would probably be doing his thing right now without any problem at all. Timothy Homseth has changed his narrative to the point where he now sits in a county jail.
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing for me to understand. I mean, my disagreement with Field McConnell was over the publication of a false story about me in abledanger.org, and he refused to back it up with evidence or remove it, and that escalated into an argument that resulted in us not speaking anymore or working together anymore. But as I said, as you said, as long as Field McConnell kind of does his thing and doesn't bother anybody, I don't care what he's doing. I don't know this guy, Kirk Pendergrass, but I have seen him in Field McConnell's house, on Field McConnell's channel. Feels very much like a parasite who's taken over, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly what he's doing. He's basically taken over the Field Report, and he's running the show in parallel with his own legal show. He's going back and forth between Field's house and his own, which is surprising. It's quite a distance, but he's basically got the run of a $300 mansion. So it's a classic case of a parasite and squatter.
Yeah. And I should also add, for people who are watching us right now, you and I have never spoken before today. And in fact, before this interview, we've only spoken for like less than 5 minutes to test the sound and all that. We've communicated a bit on Twitter, and that only started just really a few weeks before Field was put in jail. It was very strange to me because Field has been repeating things without any evidence. And when I did the first report right after Field went to jail, again, I didn't decide to do that. People were contacting me, Dan Hanley, David Hawkins. People are very concerned about this. Dan Hanley wanted to go on the record and distance himself from Field because he's not involved in any of these false accusations that Field is throwing around. And in the same way that Timothy Homseth kind of embedded himself in Field's operation and polluted that with his false accusations and got Field nailed, somebody like Dan Hanley did not even want to take a risk that something like that could occur. Now, people started contacting me after that broadcast, mostly people who were primarily Timothy Holmseth supporters. And I'm open-minded. I wanted to hear what they felt Timothy Holmseth had to say that was compelling. And not a single one of them could provide me with any evidence. Many of them referred me to an individual, was his name Cody? I forget the guy's name, but I eventually spoke to him on the phone and I said, tell me the one single most compelling piece of evidence that supports Timothy Holmseth's claims. Now, everybody else had told me, oh, you got to get his book and read his book, it's full of evidence. This person, who everybody had referred me to, told me that he no longer believes anything Timothy Holmseth said, that he was unable to find any evidence. What do you think about that, Mert?
Well, that's correct. I have read Tim's book twice. I actually have 2 copies of the book. And this was one of the primary reasons that Tim took out the injunction to have that book taken down, because the only person that Tim Holmseth said has any responsibility for whatever happened to that child is Kim Pacazio. And since the book was published and over the years, he has changed his story to fit current events. When the book was first published, there was absolutely no mention of the Ukraine. Now suddenly that the Ukraine is in the news because of this impeachment inquiry, Tim Holmseth talks about it as part of this narrative of his. He's done this over the years. He's expanded suspects. Pam Bondi, strangely enough, who is on the defense team for Donald J. Trump as part of the impeachment, was named as a suspect by Holmseth because he thought that Kim and Pam Bondi were friends. And they know each other professionally, but I don't believe there's any close association between Pam and Kim. And another thing I would like to add, I have never, ever met Kim Pacazio personally. No. We have restricted our...
Sorry.
We talk on the phone, text messages, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because this whole Ukraine aspect creeping in there, you know, there are people who have tried to accuse me of flying drones in Ukraine over the Maidan revolution in 2013 or 14, whenever that was. And see, what I observe is there seems to be a merger of the factions that have brought lawsuits against you and Kim Pacazio and the same people who have brought lawsuits against me. And I'm trying to figure out what these guys are up to. I'm trying to figure out what Timothy Holmseth's role is. I'll restate, I dislike Field McConnell, but I don't want the guy to die in jail or have an unpleasant life. It's my belief, Mert, that Timothy Holmseth and perhaps others embedded themselves in Field McConnell's operation specifically to get him to do this so that he would go to jail. Now, Field McConnell is an adult man with a brain in his head, I believe, and he should be smart enough to know that you can't go around accusing people of capital crimes and demanding their execution, certainly without evidence. I'm really surprised that he would do that. So now he, today or yesterday, has been reassigned to a special housing unit there in the Pierce County Jail. He's put on lockdown where he's no longer allowed to use the telephone to contact anyone except for a member of the bar, a licensed attorney, which Kirk Pendergrass is not. Can you tell us any details about this latest development?
Now, you have the information correct. I also understand that after he comes out of lockdown, because of reasons that cannot be disclosed, he will not be getting his phone privileges back. The restriction on the phone usage is going to remain in place until he is extradited to the state of Florida. And because of the fact that he went into lockdown, they have had to delay setting a date for the next stage of the hearing because there was a extension granted for the extradition hearings, and now because of this lockdown, it may go even farther than was previously expected.
Right. And this field report is basically, I haven't listened to very many of them, but I have personally listened to Field calling in from the jail, continuing to do exactly what it is that he did that got him put in there. Now, there's a lot of people who listen to the Field Report or Able Danger or Conspiracy Consortium or whatever it's called now, who think that this is a deep state operation, that Field McConnell did nothing wrong, that this is somehow Christine Marcy put him in jail there, and that I'm working with Christine Marcy. I can tell you, Mert, I've tried to contact Christine Marcy dozens of times. She's never answered one of my calls. She's never responded to an email from me. I'd like to know if any of the things Field McConnell has said about her are true. We've seen elements of evidence that seem to support some of the things that he said about his own sister, but I haven't been able to verify them. And so he's been calling into the show. The show is being run, I believe, by Kirk or somebody else. There was a civil engineer who was fired from a six-figure job that he had somewhere in New Jersey for doing just that, running the Field McConnell live stream show from his office at a business that had nothing to do with Field McConnell. And that was not the deep state that did that. That was the guy's company that found out that he was misusing company resources. So I don't think the deep state has anything to do with this. I think Kim Picasio is a lawyer who was hassled and harassed by Timothy Homseth for 10 years. She acted within her rights to get an injunction to get him to stop. Now, fans of Timothy Homseth and fans of this nonsense being put forward will say that that was done to suppress the truth. But again, they don't rely on any evidence. The book is not itself evidence of anything other than Tim Homseth's creative writing. Have you seen any evidence of anything in that book?
No, absolutely not. I have personally spoken to the Putnam County Sheriff's Office who investigated the case. They think that it was an accident that may have been caused. None of the stuff that's written in Tim's book they even considered. The only reason that it's an open case is because nobody will come forward and say what happened to the child. But they pretty well have concluded that the girlfriend, Misty Crosland, more than likely either accidentally or on purpose did something to the child. Right. Now remember, these people were part of a drug culture, and Haley Cummings also was a very sick child. She had to use an inhalator and take pills and stuff like that. So if there's any of these factors that they missed out on, or accidentally she got into some drugs or something and died, they panicked possibly and did something to the child. But it's not this vast conspiracy where Hillary Clinton came in with Kim and others and sold the child into the satanic business, which Tim has been hawking for years.
Right. So let's drill down on this a bit, and I apologize they didn't have more of these news articles ready, but in the course of my investigation, I found a number of publications that show photos of this girl. What's her name? Mitzi?
Misty Crosland was the babysitter and girlfriend of Ronald Cummings. That's the young lady you have down at the bottom of the screen.
Right.
And, you know, she failed lie detector tests. She eventually quit cooperating with law enforcement, and eventually, of course, she got arrested.
Well, the thing I'm trying to get to is that she had confessed at one point. First of all, she's saying that in a very tiny room in a trailer home, this 17-year-old girlfriend, Misty, was sleeping in the same room as this girl, Haley, this little girl. And she's 5. She's not an infant. She's not a baby. She could speak, and certainly if someone came into the home and abducted her, it's pretty likely she would start screaming and yelling. But the allegation is that she was taken from this trailer home while Misty was asleep in the room. Here's the room. We can see, this is the article I was looking for. So this is the little girl's bed. And this is the girlfriend, 17-year-old girlfriend's bed. I find it difficult to imagine that somebody she doesn't know could enter this room, take her out of the house, completely silent, not wake up the, I guess, teenager who's sleeping there, and just leave. The other thing is, at one point, Misty had confessed that the child had died, and she called her own brother to help her dispose of the body. and that her and her brother placed the 5-year-old child's body into a plastic bag, and using a piece of rope, they tied it to a buoy in this river where law enforcement suspects the child was eaten by alligators. It's brutal and terrible, but a section of the rope that matched the rope the police found was found in the car of Misty's brother. Is this all correct, Mert?
Yeah, generally it's correct. They did find a piece of rope attached to a cinder block. They did match it to evidence they found in the car. And basically they went nowhere with it because there simply was not enough evidence to go on the case further. They couldn't get Misty to budge on anything. She became highly uncooperative. And the couple even married briefly in order to induce spousal privilege, so neither one of them could testify with each other, against each other. The marriage didn't last more than a week or two, but it's really strange things went on in that town.
Right. So none of this gets reported by Timothy Holmseth. He's just going with allegations that have no basis whatsoever. And even though the law enforcement officials there this was Florida, obviously. And what's the county? Sorry.
It's Putnam County.
Putnam County. So the law enforcement officials in Putnam County, without a body, it's difficult for them to continue an investigation and to prosecute this kind of stuff. But on the one hand, we've got a group of basically incarcerated, drug-addicted criminals. And on the other hand, we've got yourself and an attorney with no criminal record, children of her own, who's being accused of all this horrendous stuff with no evidence whatsoever. And it's amazing to me that so many people have been socially engineered by this Timothy Holmseth fabrication that it literally has ruined this woman, Kim Pacazio's life.
That's correct. I mean, Kim has been fixated on Kim Pacazio from the start. He considered no other suspect or anything like that. And these people that he hooked up with are basically conspiracy theorists. They believe in things that anyone with any common sense wouldn't go near with a 10-foot pole. And he is a talented writer. He's very good with media. He does good work with graphics and all kinds of stuff. So he comes up with very effective propaganda, which is basically what it is. And these people fall for it.
Right. And so Kim Pacazio, she's a lawyer in good standing. She's dealing in family law, divorce. This would make sense why the mother of the child would hire this law firm. A lot of people who listen to, what's his name, Kirk Pendergrass, Kirk just comes out and says, yeah, he just comes out and says, oh, well, this is a sham. And so people think, oh, it's been proven to be a sham. He hasn't presented any evidence at all. Do you know why this charge came from family court? People have said that Field is in jail over something with family court.
It's because when this was taken out, the cyber stalking was relatively new to the court system. And so procedurally, they would use the family courts to come up with these stalking requests, the injunctions, because in the beginning, the domestic violence category that they used was against family members, husbands abusing wives and children and so on. But the state of Florida expanded it temporarily in order to cover this relatively new phenomenon of cyber stalking, people doing the same thing by computer that they might do if they were in the same town. Now, Florida has since changed its procedures slightly so that it's more defined as to what the injunction is going to cover that would be taken out against someone.
Got it. But Kim Pacazio doesn't have some unusual control over the law in Wisconsin and the law in Florida. She's simply acting in her capacity as a lawyer, looking up what the laws are, and even though they might seem strange to a layperson, as you've just described, this is a convoluted way that things become laws.
That's correct. She also hired another lawyer to do it. She didn't file these herself. She went to a lawyer that specializes in these kind of cases and had that lawyer do the filings, made sure that she was on correct standing and so forth. So, it's just like she didn't march down there being a lawyer and do it herself. She actually hired a lawyer to do it for her.
Wow. See, that's interesting. I never
Kind
understand
of
why.
like a doctor practicing a medicine on himself type thing.
Yeah, lawyers always tell me that, and I see it happen all the time. Dershowitz hired lawyers when he was, I went to this Dershowitz lawsuit over here in the Second Circuit, and I was confused that such a skilled lawyer would have another lawyer representing him, and Dershowitz was actually basically yelling in the guy's ear, telling him exactly what to say. I'm sure there's a complicated reason that lawyers know about that I don't, that explains why they do that. But it's another example that the law is a pretty complicated thing, and if you haven't studied it, it doesn't necessarily follow intuition. Sometimes it's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. The a specialized lawyer that would deal in, say, um, bankruptcy law wouldn't be practicing family law because the
Right.
nuances of the different fields are totally different. It's just like having a general practitioner isn't going to do neurosurgery because of the nuances involved in the different
Exactly.
practices. And this is
Exactly.
where it gets into with lawyering.
And I apologize, Mert. We had attempted to set up this simulcast on from the desk of Mert Witness One, and there are some people waiting there, but something must be wrong. I apologize for that. But people who are
Oh,
watching us
that's
now, who are interested in learning more about William Murtaugh, can subscribe to the YouTube channel From the Desk of Mert Witness One Live, and we will have this video uploaded to that channel after we're done. So there's a lot to this case, and again, I'm particularly interested in the players on the peripheral. The fact, I didn't know that he had brought Ukraine into this, but it's very interesting because my falling out with Field McConnell was specifically over an article that was published on abledanger.org titled Insane in the Ukraine, which is a false and fictitious article published by another malicious social engineer, a guy who was sued by his ex-girlfriend for allegedly being a fat slob with gout. And this guy is trying to intervene in the lawsuit against me in New York. He wrote the article alleging that I was in Ukraine flying drones. This is totally false, totally fabricated. He obviously did not look into this. He made it up. And it's interesting that they're now trying to tie this child trafficking thing to Ukraine. So I wanted to get ahead of these liars and share some of the factual information with people who, for whatever reason, are just bound to Field McConnell. It's like a cult of personality that they feel he can do nothing wrong. I'm actually very offended by Field McConnell calling for the death and incarceration of a woman who, according to the evidence and all accounts, appears to be not only totally innocent, but a productive member of society who, as you said, is conducting pro bono cases for this poor woman who's drug addicted or drug trafficking ex-husband or baby daddy or whatever this guy was, could very well be responsible for the inadvertent death of their daughter. I mean, the mother must be devastated.
well, the biological mother, I believe, is deceased
Oh,
because she was heavily into drugs. She
oh
wasn't
my
in very good
God.
health anyway, and I think she died recently.
Oh my God.
I'm not clear on that, but that's my understanding. Um, yeah, the local law enforcement in Putnam County pretty well feel that there were someone in the immediate family was involved in whatever happened to Haley, whether it be on purpose or an accident, more than likely the latter, and it was probably at one of these parties.
Wow.
And they just have not been able to nail down the specific cause, and that's why the case remains open.
Wow. And you're describing an entire family of people with drug problems. So, what is Timothy Holmseth's connection to this family? Why is he so interested? I mean, there's a lot of children that get kidnapped or murdered, or, why this particular case for Timothy Holmseth?
Well, it's kind of hard to get in the head of Timothy Holmseth. For whatever reason, he became fixated on both this and the death of the child in Denver, Colorado. And he basically just became obsessed with the case and obsessed with Kim Bacasio. The John Bonet Ramsey case, he's picked up on that now because he's accusing a radio person or a social media personality of being involved in that case.
Yes. I heard about that.
And the only reason that he's going after Montagraph is because Montagraph has basically done what I have, and that is to call him out on some of this fake information. So he's gone after this video that Monty made years ago and the fact that Monty lives in Colorado, and he's made all kinds of wild allegations against Montagraph.
Yeah.
And this is what Tim does.
Yeah.
You get pissed off at Tim Homseth, he goes after you and is relentless.
Yeah, Montagraph and I had a bit of a rough start, but I've come to realize he seems to be a pretty fair and reasonable guy. I think he's come to a similar understanding about me. He and I have no beef with one another. I think there's no way that he was involved in anything to do with the John Benet Ramsey case. It's interesting, though, that Timothy Homseth becomes interested in that, because that's also a case that David Hawkins has spoken about quite a bit. David Hawkins, formerly affiliated with Field McConnell, and none of the evidence whatsoever would indicate that Montagraph had anything to do with it. I don't know how Timothy Homseth would come to that. So he seems to be a guy who's in the business of just accusing people of stuff, but he's got to have some purpose, right, Mert? I mean, is there any way for us to unravel? You know, you said that Robert David Steele had introduced Timothy Homseth to Stephen S. Biss. How do you know that?
Because when the lawsuit was impending, Tim Homseth made the announcement, and he had made it clear that Steele was involved in making the arrangements for the attorney. At that time, Steele had an organization quite similar to this Children's Crusade that Field created. Had the same goal, was even in England of all places, and Timothy Homseth was supposed to fly overseas and give some testimony at a tribunal. And somehow Tim manages to get attached to these kind of people that will go along with his narrative. And I think the sole purpose for Tim doing this is he wants to be the hero. He wants the attention. He wants to be credited for solving all these incredible cases that have been in the national spotlight for years. And every once in a while, if a new one comes along, he gets involved in it. There happened to be a case in Minnesota. I believe it was the Waterling case, and he got right in the middle of that one. And that's just his modus operandi. He finds something that he feels is going to make him famous among either the internet or what have you, and he goes for it. He got involved with Q for this very reason.
Now let me ask you this. We see these tweets included in the lawsuit here. This is something I've never seen in a lawsuit before I became aware of Mr. Biss. What is this op exposed TH? Is this one of these unknown Twitter handles that are John Doe's in the lawsuit? Yeah,
it's a John Doe. It's somebody that basically wanted to troll Homseth, so they came up with that, thing and went after him.
Right.
This is done all the time. I've been the subject of some of these trolls. I've got a troll, as a matter of fact, with the Field McConnell name in it that's been after me for on and off for weeks, and I suspect it's a woman that lives in Virginia that's doing those Twitter accounts.
Well, why would she do that? What beef does she have with you?
Because I'm against Timothy Homseth in her eyes. If it's the woman I think it is, her and I had quite a bit of argument because she is an extremely staunch supporter of Homseth. She wants people fired. There was a media personality by the name of Levi Page that she's targeted for years, because Levi Page has called out Timothy Homseth for going after Kim Pacazio. And, it's just these parties arguing amongst each other, and this is the outcome. We have all these troll accounts come up. We have people being accused of weird stuff. And it's been going on for 10 years now.
Yeah. See, I've moved away from using the term troll because it's not descriptive enough and it just seems pejorative and not effective. I think these people are social engineers, and I think that they disguise themselves as trolls so that intelligent people will dismiss them and not look into what they're doing. What I've been trying to do for 2 years is to look into what they're doing. And I find it very strange, Mert, because, see, these unknown anonymous Twitter handles, they seem to be showing up all over the place in these Stephen Biss lawsuits. And it causes me to wonder, is it possible that these are somehow being motivated by parties whose interests are aligned with Stephen Biss? I wonder, because they seem...
It's a possibility. Yeah. It's a possibility, because the disadvantage of these kind of handles is you don't know who's behind them. You know, it could be a housewife sitting in her living room, or it could be a professional social engineer sitting in an office someplace. You absolutely do not know. There's been some pretty sophisticated Twitter handlers come out in this particular situation, and you know, nobody has any idea who's creating this stuff.
What do you mean by sophisticated?
Well, just the wording and the fact that they're able to come up with some of the techniques for graphic arts and videos and so forth. It's just, it's not an amateur doing these things. It's someone that knows a great deal about the internet and a great deal about graphic arts and, the technology involved in creating some of this stuff. And the fact that somebody is able to create 10, 15, 20 email accounts to create all these Twitter accounts takes a little bit of sophistication.
See, now you and I are talking about the same thing, because I'm beginning to believe that these lawsuits are sophisticated social engineering operations in and of themselves. I don't know about, maybe I'm using the term sophisticated generously, but I think there's a technique being used here, and I think we're closing in on exactly what it is. So, Timothy Holmseth is introduced to Stephen S. Biss by Robert David Steele. It's interesting. I'm putting things together in my mind as we speak here. So here's the thing. I do not support Field McConnell in what he has done at all. And in fact, for what he has done, he's getting what he deserves. He's made his own bed and he's lying in it. The fact is, if Kirk Pendergrass and Field McConnell feel that there is a problem with the legal system, with the laws, with the penal system, that's their right, for sure. And there is a way to lobby Congress and try to affect a change in our justice system, but simple defiance is not the way to do it. And calling out an innocent woman on the internet, and I wonder how Kim Pacasio feels about all this. She's being accused of horrendous things. I know how I feel when people accuse me of things that I haven't done, and then people come in here to the comments and repeat those things. It's affected my business, it's affected my life, and this is what these people are trying to do. It's pretty bad, isn't it, Mert?
Yes, it is. You see, you have to understand, Kim Pacasio is not a YouTuber. She's not a social media person. She only got involved lightly with first of all, with the case, and now with all these things being done to her. She's forced into it. She's upset. She's exasperated. This is on her mind all the time. And,
for 10 years.
She would have to be involved.
10 years, Mert. It's difficult to believe. It's torture.
Yeah, it's me.
And you said she had to hire a lawyer to fight this. That had to cost a ton of money.
Yeah, it's cost her a lot of money. In excess of $100,000 the last I've heard.
Wow.
And she's not going to be able to cover that.
Whoa. So what was the outcome of this lawsuit? It's over now. On Pacer, it said it's closed.
They threw it out. It says the judge told Biss that he would have to go to Florida to fight it, or Tim would have to get a lawyer in Florida to fight it. And so the case just went away.
Interesting.
Not
See, I believe that Stephen Biss is in the business of just bringing frivolous lawsuits against people, hoping that they'll settle or default out. And we're going to see what happens. I haven't discussed this on air, but I'm ready to do it now, Mert. People may know because it's public information. Last week, I filed a motion to disqualify Stephen S. Biss from the lawsuit in Virginia for alleged unethical conduct that's invoked the advocate witness rule. And this is something that I observed from sitting in the Giuffre versus Dershowitz case. Dershowitz used this, and it remarkably fit perfectly with my case. Evidence came to my attention that suggested that what we're describing was going on in my case. And I now feel it's necessary for Stephen S. Biss to be called as a witness under oath so I can ask him and he can give sworn testimony about the things that I'm speculating about right now, the questions that I have relative to his behavior. And a person cannot be both an attorney and a witness in the same case. So we're waiting for a ruling on that from the federal judge in Virginia, the Honorable M. Hannah Locke, will rule on that hopefully soon. But Stephen S. Biss is in danger of being disqualified as Robert David Steele's attorney in their case against me. And I can tell you, Mert, I am dedicated to unraveling what is behind all of these screwy lawsuits.
Well, he has a reputation, from what I understand, Biss, of these lawsuits against bloggers in hopes that they'll settle. And as a result, Virginia is revisiting the statutes that allowed these lawsuits in the first place. This against participation lawsuits that go against the amendment.
Strategic.
Yeah, slap suit. And they are. Yeah, I had a mind block there. But what it basically does is the state of Virginia wants to change the criteria so these things won't be filed as often. Because it's given the state a bad reputation. Because now they have two major, this Nunes lawsuit against Twitter has given Virginia a bad name. That everybody can go to Virginia and make these weird lawsuits because of all the cases that are on the docket right now, including yours. So this is resulting in something being done about that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make sure that Mr. Biss gets an education in justice. And if what I'm saying is incorrect, he can prove that in court. But I feel very strongly that we're onto something here, Mert. Are there any other elements of this that you can share with us that you think will shed some more light on it? I think we're covering a lot of the aspects. Oh, the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. Now, what is that? What evidence do we have that that exists anywhere other than in Timothy Homseth's mind?
The Pedophile Task Force does not exist. It's called the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. Supposedly, someone in the Pentagon, under the direction of Donald J. Trump, has a small force that has authorized Timothy Homseth to publish information about children being rescued. This California incident where supposedly 2,100 kids were rescued is an example of the narrative. Now, the United States government does not operate that way. The Justice Department is not going to go to a military agency and have them do their investigation. Any task force would be under the Justice Department. And I can tell you that right now, I have heard information that there is a federal investigation into this. That Phil McConnell, Timothy Homseth may be charged with impersonating agents of the federal government.
Whoa. So wait a minute. So you're saying separate from the violation of the permanent injunction from the state of Florida, the action that has Field McConnell incarcerated right now, separate from that, you're saying there's a federal investigation into their claims that they're part of an alleged Pentagon task force that doesn't exist?
Correct. From what I've heard, I haven't been able to absolutely confirm it, but they are in violation of a law that prohibits people from going around saying that they are an agent, employee, or officer of the United States government and retrieve documents, solicit funds, or it's close to being impersonating a law enforcement officer. It's a felony. There's a fine and 3 years in prison for each count. And everybody is supposed to be under investigation by the Justice Department in regards to this problem.
Right. There are people sharing their opinions with us in the comments right now. Jordana is telling us she doesn't think Picasso is squeaky clean. I want people who visit Crowdsource the Truth to understand, don't be offended by this, but your opinions are not what we're looking for. If someone has evidence, put that in there. But just saying, I don't think Picasio, what makes you think that, Jordana? Have you seen any evidence that Kim Picasio has done anything wrong? And frankly, even if you have, that doesn't give Field McConnell the right to demand her execution. I heard the man say that she should be put in front of a firing squad. I saw him give out her business address. This is actually what caused me to contact you. I'll tell you, I called Kim Picasio's office. I wanted to talk to her as well. But throughout the course of learning this whole situation, I've come to realize that that's exactly how Timothy Homseth originally contacted her, so I can understand her reluctance to speak to unknown people who call up and say, hey, I'm a YouTube journalist who wants to talk to you about this situation with Timothy Homseth. But it was when Field started giving out her address, telling people to go to her place of business. I haven't told you this, but the social engineers did exactly that to me. Came here to this apartment building, showed the building, told people this is where Jason Goodman lives. The comments were horrendous. And I take serious issue with people who want to go around the internet. I mean, what happens if whoever's doing that thinks it's funny, thinks it's a joke, somebody paid them $500 to do it, whatever motivates them to do it? What happens if one of the 10,000 people who sees that video is crazy and decides to wait outside this apartment building or decides to wait outside Kim Picasio's office and stab one of us, shoot one of us, hit us in the head with a brick? How can this possibly be allowed? I fully support the people that do the types of things that Fields McConnell has done. They should go to jail.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we had the guy that did the Pizzagate thing. I have personally been threatened by someone on Tim Homseth's Facebook page, a guy that lived in the same city. I've had numerous problems. I've been swatted. I've had people report me to law enforcement. It's a mess. And I lost a business over this. I used to be a car dealer. I don't have that anymore because people would create topics, reviews on my business and basically trashed it.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, this is just the kind of people that are out there. They do it either for fun or they do it because they believe the narrative and they're out to punish these people. And it's gotten way, way out of control.
You've just described something very important, Mert. You had a business. That was your livelihood. That's how you bought food. That's how you supported your family. And they took that away from you. And they did it in a way that is, it's different. They didn't come up to you, to your car dealership with a gun and steal all your money. They did it in a way, see, just as you described, the state of Florida using the family court system to apply this cyber stalking law. This is presumption on my part, but you've told us that there was a problem in Florida where ex-husbands or ex-wives were stalking their former spouses, and so this form of law came up through the family courts, and then I guess whatever circumstances were going on, the most direct way to translate existing laws into something that could be applied, you know, to give somebody a cause of action in a lawsuit, that's where the law was in Florida. So these things develop, and the social engineers are constantly looking for ways to take action with technology and techniques that's ahead of the law, so that there's not even really a clear way for you to deal with this. And I also believe that's a major component of how these Stephen Biss lawsuits are constructed. They're doing things that sort of merge military intelligence tactics with civil litigation procedure. This use of operational plants like Karen Denise Gower. This could be a totally fake person, and you're saying that this person created the petition that appealed to you so that you put your name on it. Did Kim Picasio put her name on it?
No. Kim Picasio didn't know a thing about the petition until the lawsuit.
But isn't it interesting that that petition is sort of a honeypot, sort of a dragnet to attract you? They know that you've got a real issue with Timothy Homseth, which is legitimate. You should. They put out this petition, you sign it, and suddenly now they've got a way to claim that Kim Picasio, William Murtaugh, and Karen Denise Gower are in a conspiracy, and furthermore, they've got all these John Does. And so you are all co-defendants against the plaintiff. And this is very similar to what's been done in my lawsuit. Patricia Negron and Susan Lutsky are named as co-defendants in my lawsuit, and months after I severed ties with those individuals, they continued doing things that resulted in amended complaints. So my speculation is, if someone created co-defendants like these John Doe Twitter handles that they actually control, that are not true co-defendants, they're operational plants, they could then use those false co-defendants to generate these tweets that they're using in their allegations against you and present a litany of, I'm making air quotes here, a litany of evidence, let's say, that they could present to a court and say, here's the conspiracy to defame. But they are the ones provoking the defamation.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility. There's a term that I'm not sure if I used on here. It's called the straw man, where you create a fake plaintiff out of thin air in order to get the trial heard.
That seems to be what they're doing. Well, Mert, we've run through our hour here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people before we wrap it up tonight?
No, I do appreciate the time. I would just like to tell the Field McConnell supporters that I have nothing against Field. I don't care about what he does, but when a person gets into falsely accusing people of things they did not say or do, and they go around saying they want that person to die one way or another, it's crossed the line.
Absolutely.
And Field could have settled this months ago by going to Florida and fighting it in court, and he chose not to do so. So whatever happened to him is by his own making, and he has to be held accountable.
Absolutely. He's a grown man, and he should know what he's doing. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight, Mert, and I want people who are watching us to visit your channel from the desk of Mert Witness One Live. People can subscribe to your YouTube channel and stay on top of the reports that you've been issuing. You've been really diligent about following up with the courthouse there and the jail and finding out what's going on. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'm really sorry that these social engineers destroyed your business. It's what they're trying to do to me right now, and I'm dedicated to preventing them from doing that, not only to me, but to anybody in the future. And people who are watching us right now can help me do that by becoming a sponsor of this show. You can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And for as little as $2 a month, you can help keep this show going. We're searching for the truth here, and even if you don't like it, it's important that we know what it is rather than just supporting people who we get a fuzzy feeling from on the internet. I've seen no evidence whatsoever to support a single thing that Timothy Holmseth has said. He has parroted this narrative that I first heard from Robert David Steele, that Vice President Mike Pence is involved in human trafficking. And I'll tell you this, I don't care for Mike Pence. I don't like him at all. I don't think he's a good choice for vice president. But as you said, Mert, I really take umbrage to people accusing others of things that they haven't done, and particularly without evidence. And I know that Mert may not agree with this. I'm not trying to turn this into a political conversation, but I know a lot of viewers of Crowdsource the Truth support the president and object to this process that he's being subjected to because the witnesses are presenting hearsay testimony and because of a lack of evidence. So I want those people to think to themselves, how can you support that when the target is President Trump, but completely flip when the target is Kim Pacazio, a lawyer who is innocent of these allegations and someone who you've never met? So I hope that people will use their discernment, and I hope that people will follow your ongoing investigation. What's the new series that you're doing right now, Mert?
It's called The Eye in the Sky. It's based on the theory that what Timothy Holmseth says is true, and how somebody like Mike Pence or some of these powerful people would go about gathering the information necessary to carry out their plan. And it's to show that none of us can hide. Eventually, if somebody wants us badly enough, they're going to find us. And that's the focus of the entire series.
Excellent. All right, William Murtaugh, thank you very much, sir. We'll have you back anytime you have some information to share with us. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Have a great night.
Thank you, and good night, sir. Thanks for having me.